Today we'll discuss about newspapers and magazine as communication media, its meaning, difference between newspaper and magazines, and functions of newspaper and magazine. What does communication media mean? What is communication? Communication means transferring the thoughts, information, emotion, and ideas through gesture, voice, symbols, signs, and expressions from one person to another, and so that there must be a common understanding between sender and receiver. Only then we can say that communication takes place. A sender may send so many information, but if the receiver will not understand these things or not accept these things, then it is not communication. What the sender send, the receiver should understand in the same way. Then only it is communication. Three things are most important and essential in any communication process: sender, receiver, and the channel. Of course, message treatment is also there because that part is important to understand the message by the receiver at par with the sender. What is channel? Communication media refers to the means of delivering and receiving data or information. Any message or information needs some channel or medium to send it. That means the information or message that are carried by some channel. Otherwise, it is not possible to transfer the message from sender to receiver. And this channel may be of different type. A medium serves as the means of communication, whereas a channel refers to the means of transmission of a message between the sender and the receiver. Through the channel, finally, the message received by the receiver. A sender conveys his or her message to the receiver by some medium over some channel. At present, I am sending the message, I am discussing with you. This is verbal. And this verbal message sent through some electronic means so that you can receive these things. When I speak at that time, my sound or message, it is passes through air. It is a verbal communication. After that, since you are at distance place, I use some channel. Here the electronics means through which my voice is received by you. Newspaper and magazine, their meaning, characteristics, and differences. What is newspaper? Papers where you will get news. This is the newspapers. Then what is magazine? It is also like newspaper, but style is different, content are different. Both are print publication and both are issued at regular interval over time. But that regular interval, in this case, there are some difference. In case of newspaper, it may be daily, weekly, sometimes semi-weekly, twice a week, bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, or monthly. Even newspaper, it can be published monthly. In case of magazine, generally, it is weekly, twice every 2 weeks, monthly, quarterly, even half-yearly. And the duration, because in case of news, it is mostly daily or weekly. The reason is that it carries news, the new information. But in case of magazine, it does not carry the new information, but analysis of already published news, in-depth studies of something. So in magazine, they are not so much concerned about the news, but concerned about the background of the news. And for that purpose, it needs some time. So publication duration is also more. But in newspaper, generally, if it is daily, reader gives more preference to them. Even if you check the newspaper, which is published daily and which is published weekly, in that case also, you will get some different type of news. In daily newspaper, you will get the what was happened just before this. But in case of weekly, there also new things will publish, but that new things are described in some different ways. In case of newspaper, daily newspaper, people want what is happening around him immediately. So in daily newspaper, the reporter published those news instantly without any explanation. In general, the purpose of a newspaper is to convey as efficiently as possible current information or news to a particular audience. The current information, the recent one, which is news. What constitutes news depends in part on the intended audience. As a reader, you will consider whether it is a news or not. And depending upon the reader's choice, the reporter will also publish the news. Newspaper aimed at general audience. for a particular newspaper, there are different types of audience or reader. Their demography will be different, their interest will be different, their choice will be different, and because of that, to fulfill the information need of all sort of reader, the newspaper publish different type of news in the same issue, and ultimately it fulfill the need of every readers. In case of a farm newspaper, it generally carries the information related with farming technique, farm policy, information about the progress of the farm-related legislation, crop price, and state fairs, and so forth. And here they are concerned with the farmers. What farmers want? It try to fulfill the information need of the farmers related with farming. A magazine, or sometimes called as periodical, will in general be written in a more elevated prose style and will usually offer more in-depth coverage of news if it carries news at all. That means in a magazine or periodical, generally the writing style is sophisticated, artistic, and here they will write those things. Suppose based on a news, they will write a feature story. Then since already it is published, so it is not required to reprint or republish the same things, but instead of that, they will provide in-depth coverage of that news, because in the newspaper, it is not possible for them to cover in-depth event, because immediately they publish these things. So what is happened? Simply they inform those things to the audience. There is no scope. If a newspaper attempts to inform, a magazine, in contrast, attempt to enlighten and entertain. In case of newspaper, main thing is to provide information, but a magazine to enlighten and entertain. If you feel bored, you will read a magazine of your own interest, but not necessarily a newspaper, because you want entertainment, all these things. And because of that, writing style will be different in case of magazine. Magazine usually have covers, often bearing an illustration or photograph. You can easily distinguish these things. If you compare one newspaper with one magazine, you can find out so many differences between newspaper and magazine. And first of all is the cover page. In your magazine, there is a colorful cover page, but in case of newspaper, there is no cover page, but the first page, which is most important one. No cover, but nameplate running across the top of its front page. Nameplate means the name of the newspaper. The rest of the page being filled with news stories, and most important news stories are published in the first page. If it is a first page news, that means value is more. It is more newsworthy. Magazines are more likely than newspaper to have detailed tables of contents, whereas newspapers, if they include any table of contents at all, will simply identify the principal section. In case of magazine, you will get more graphics, more photographs, all these things to explain the information. But in case of newspaper, you will get any graphics or tables. But at present, you will get some graphics or tables in front page of the newspaper, particularly to provide the principal information, principal section, that is about the statistics of COVID-19, country-wise, number of patients, death, all these things. Because if these things are presented in a tabular form, then reader can understand these things more easily than published in a text form. So in some cases, the editor of the newspaper, they will also provide published table, graphics, but when it is needed. But in case of magazine, these are common things. What are the differences? There are some differences. A magazine offers more long form writing. There are mostly, you will get feature articles, 2-page, 3-page, but in case of newspaper, hardly 400, 500 words per news. In case of head news, it may be 800, but in general, average 400 to 500 words or less. But in case of magazine, at least 2 pages you will get for one article. Magazines are published on monthly basis, mostly, or fortnightly, sometimes weekly. On the other hand, newspapers are published every day for people to read. Most of the cases, And actually, which are published daily, generally public consider those as newspaper, because in those newspaper, daily published newspapers, you will get the recent information, and people are hungry about information. Magazines are published on a better paper than newspaper, because in magazine there are lots of photographs, graphics, all these things, and it is in general published in a fortnightly or monthly basis, so it should be kept for longer period of time, so its paper quality is better. But in case of newspaper, paper quality is not good, it is newsprint. Today's newspaper, daily news, has no value for tomorrow, so people will also not too much concerned about keeping these things. At regular interval, they also sell all those things to other person at rupees 10 per kg, like that. But in case of magazine, they keep it for longer period of time. Magazines are very important in society because they offer things that a newspaper cannot. Newspaper, they provide only the news instantly. What? That part. No explanation. But in society, people want to know why it was happened, how it was happened. And in a news, it is not possible to mention all these things in details. Simply they mention the event. But in magazine, they get the time to explain all these things in elaborate way, and because of that, people of the society, they will get more information for magazines. But day-to-day information that are coming from newspaper, not from magazine. And because of that, both magazine and newspaper are important for us. Newspapers are written for a general audience, already I have mentioned, while magazines are for specific type of audience. In case of magazine, if you observe, then you will find that the particular magazine, it is carry a particular type of information, maybe a political, maybe a health, maybe sports magazine, cultural magazine, fashion magazine, like that. And who are interested on those part, they will purchase those magazines. But in case of newspaper, whether you love sports, fashion, you will read newspapers. And since your interests are also different, newspaper try to cater the need of every readers. And therefore, their writing style is a general one to satisfy all the reader. What is the function of a newspaper? Main function is to inform what is going on in our surroundings. It is informed by the newspaper because we can't know everything. At present, we are at lockdown position, but we are eagerly waiting for the update about COVID-19. What is happening in Guwahati, what is happening in Dibrugarh, Mumbai, Delhi, like that. And newspaper, they collect the information and inform us all these things. But they will not explain in details, only the information. To interpret the news, in some cases, they will explain the news, interpretation of the news, that this thing was happened, then what will be the impact. Sometimes, in some cases, we can easily understand that if it is happened, because of that, it will be happen. And in that case, in the news, they will also mention these type of things. But they will not interpret to the extent like prediction, because immediately they receive the information and based on that they will interpret. To provide a service to readers, the basic service is to fulfill the information need. People are hungry about information, and newspaper, it provides information to readers. And because of that, in a particular newspaper, they are providing different type of information: political, economic, social, farm, sports, cultural, everything, so that the reader will satisfy, to entertain. This is another function, but it is not the basic function of newspaper. To entertain means they also publish news from which the reader will get entertainment. But in case of magazine, the writer will try to write in such a way that by reading this article, the reader will get entertainment. But here it is something different. The news which may provide entertainment, that type of news will be published, because that is also a need for the readers. Have you seen that in some newspapers, some means most of the newspapers, they publish at weekly basis one thing that is on astrology. The editor, he is an educated person, he never believe on this type of things, but still he published astrology. Why? Because there are so many readers who want these type of things. This is the case. They never emphasize that this is correct, you should follow these things, but only they provide the information. If you believe, you can follow. If you not believe, don't follow, don't read. But since there are readers who want this type of things, so they try to fulfill their needs. This is the case. In case of function of magazine, one is surveillance function. They supervise the entire activities, what is going on in the society. It provides information about the society and the developments taking place. It is just like a watchdog. And because of that, they published in-depth analysis of information. When they will investigate all the things, they will investigate all the things for welfare of the society. And this is their surveillance function, correlation function. It maintains a relationship between new one and old one, the new policy, new opinion with earlier one. What will happen if these things are coming? Why it is important? Why it is not so important? All these type of things they will analyze. If a new program is launched, then they will interpret what is the plus point, what is the minus point. At present, after few days, you will also get this type of writings in magazines regarding the economic package declared by the Prime Minister, because it needs some time to study the things, and after that they will give their interpretation. But newspaper, they provide the information that economic packages are given. But if there is any weakness, any loopholes, any section remain untouched, all these things that will coming out after a few days when expert will interpret all the things. For that purpose, it needs some time. Cultural transmission function. Most of the magazine, they are concerned with this part, and they publish so many articles related with culture. And because of that culture, those type of article, there is an exchange of culture among the readers. They know the culture of other people, and because of that, they also respect each other. And in India, we have so many culture, and it is not possible for us to understand all the culture, but because of the magazine, we can understand all these things, because at regular interval, we are getting the information from magazine. Then entertainment function. You can provide all these things, but this portion should be present. That means whatsoever you will retain for magazine, that entertainment function part should be there, because we generally read magazine at leisure time with enjoyment and relaxation. So our writing style are also different. If the magazine is published very serious topic, nobody will read. And in general, magazine are read by people during the leisure time. And leisure time means the enjoyment and relaxation. And instead of that, if you get some serious topic, then why you will read that magazine? So entertainment should be there in case of magazine.